Welcome back to the Primal Reset podcast. We're joined today by Myriam Pelletier. She's the founder of the Loft Pilates Studio and a pioneer in holistic movement therapy. With over 27 years of experience, she's helped countless of individuals overcome chronic pain and avoid surgery through a unique blend of Pilates, nervous system regulation, and trauma-informed movement. Her personal healing journey and deep clinical expertise makes her a true leader in the future of preventative wellness. Myriam, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elliot. Nice introduction. Makes me feel shy.
So tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got into creating the Loft Pilates Studio.
Well, like you said, it started 27 years ago and it was for personal reason. I was trying to avoid spinal fusion surgery. I had a severe scoliosis and I was living in chronic back pain. I was 28 years old at the time when I was searching madly for a solution. And when I was given that diagnosis or offering, the spinal fusion surgery, and I looked in every direction and I ended up finding Pilates. And the two people that were teaching me one of them had a very strong rehab background, and it changed my life. It really absolutely changed my life. So my spine, that was the part of me that I detested the most, became my success. I built a business around it. So I learned a lot about the body. So it came from a personal need, I would say.
And it's a crazy story to hear, because most people that I speak with on the podcast, off the podcast, just in person and just creating connections with people, I hear always when people start businesses, when entrepreneurs start businesses, it's always, especially in the wellness industry, based on something that they had gone through in the past. And it warms my heart to see them going through a struggle in their earlier years and saying, I'm not going to let anyone else go through the same thing I had to go through. Or if I can at least help them go through some, or try to at least better themselves for the same pain that you've gone through in their past as well. So I love hearing that story every single time. What I wanted to ask, a lot of people talk about Pilates. You hear about it mainly with the women. What is Pilates? What's the difference between Pilates and gym exercises and HIIT workouts and cardio or CrossFit? Or what's the difference between all of them?
Well, for me personally, I think it means different things to different people, and it depends on the technique. There are different certification bodies, and the mentality can be different. When I started 27 years ago, there was a big war, a legal war happening in New York, and with three large studios, the one in Toronto, one in New York, and one in LA. And if that lawsuit would have gone positive for the New York studio, everybody would be doing Pilates for dancers. So Pilates can be applied to anything you do, that it is functional, meaning sitting, standing, breathing, simple things you do in life, carrying your grandchild or your child, groceries, anything. And it can also enhance performances. It was mainly used by the dancers in New York, because that's where Joseph Pilates ended up immigrating to. But it can be applied to anything: skiers, gymnasts, acrobats, hockey players, anybody and the philosophy is interesting. It really works differently than most technique, which is working from the inside out mostly. It's getting to understand how precision, concentration, was some of the principle. I've done it for so long and I don't even remember what they are. But those principles like flow, all those principles really help you reprogram your body. I don't think Joseph Pilates knew the extent of what he was creating. It has evolved, like any technique, it has evolved over the years. And sadly, when it hit the gym, when I call it gym-ified, there was a huge demand at that stage to have Pilates instructor in gyms, because it was the next trend, and it forced studios and anybody to just produced instructors, but it really, really sabotaged the technique. So when the lawsuit was actually, the lawsuit came out that Pilates was a word and a name that had been used for so many that nobody could actually hold it. It actually ended up being a negative thing in some ways. Anybody could tell they were a Pilates instructor. I could simply watch 2 videos and call myself a Pilates instructor and just simply open a studio and say, there you go. I just memorized a series of exercises and that's it. At the time, though, 27 years ago, the certification was pretty heavy and they were already changing. For me, it was a year and a half, but before it was 3 years. You wouldn't touch a client for a year. You had to do hours of observation. You had to do hours, and I mean countless. 150 hours of observation is a long time. 150 hours of practicing on yourself and 150 hours of practicing with guinea pigs. And so you learned to really assess people, what their needs were. You understood a lot of the biomechanics. At the time, there was a lot of anatomy. You had to learn so much about the body, biomechanics. We pretty much learned similar things as kinesiologist. My anatomy, even though I'm not a medical doctor or anything, is often pretty good compared to many, many people out there. So it's an interesting technique. It offers quite a lot. It makes you think of your body in a way that you really never thought about it, and it really touches the many layers of the body. Very often in the gym, we really work on global muscles. Yeah, but there's a lot more to you than just global large muscles. There are tiny little muscles like this that hold your vertebrae, it stabilizes and part of the core system. Those are very different to train than a quad that's the longest muscles in the body.
Absolutely. And when you say you work internally, what do you mean by
Very
Pilates targets internally to help the external?
Yes. Okay. So the deep core system is internal. It's the deepest place of yourself, and you need to start from there. Like for example, when people come to see me and they want to improve their core, I often ask, "What's the core?" If I asked you, just as a game, "What's the core?" What would you tell me, Elliot?
For me, playing hockey for so many years, for me, the core is kind of the centerpiece of my mass. And a lot of the times the thought process goes straight to the stomach. And I think abs, the core.
That's what a lot of people think. But the core is actually a series of muscle system that's shaped like a balloon. It's internal. You're right. It's in the same area. There's only one layer of your abdominal wall that's considered part of the core, is your transverse abdominis, the external and internal obliques, and the six pack, what people call the rectus muscles. The six pack is actually, they're not part of the core. They're more part of what Joseph Pilates called the powerhouse, which is more what gym people would do, like what you do in a gym. And it's a combination of muscles that works pretty much, think like an hydraulic pump. It actually constantly moves up and down, up and down. And it's an adaptive system. That means based on what you're doing, it needs to adapt to the force, the speed, the strength, anything that you're doing, it needs to adapt. So the first thing I tell people when they come in, I said, breath is core. So, and in a society like today where everybody suffers from extreme anxiety, where people are quite stressed, they don't breathe. Or they breathe, I would say they don't breathe. They'd be dead if they didn't, but they have shallow breathing. They utilize one little percentage of that strength that they have. And in some cases, in many cases, when there is a chronic pain, they have a reverse type of breathing, meaning that when they're supposed to breathe in to give them support and exhale to give them that strength to perform something, they're doing the opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. So you start from within and then you kind of layer it. Now that's very difficult to do because you're asking your body, your awareness to be in a system that's usually is automatic. You're not really thinking. Things are happening when you sleep at night. You're not thinking or breathing. Your body breathes itself. So it's creating healthy neural link that helps you have efficiency and being functional. So that's what I mean by starting from deep within. Pelvic floor
Interesting.
muscles are part of that. The multifidus are part of that. And for me, the diaphragm, of course. And for me, I really consider the psoas, your deep leg muscles, to be part of that too. Even though they're not considered to be in a biology book, they have a huge effect on how your deep core system is going to function.
Interesting. It's all kind of interconnected with starting with breathing. It's kind of like moving up levels, if you will. And I've studied a little bit on the breathing techniques, and like you say, everyone breathes. You know, we don't think about it when we're asleep, and we don't think about it throughout the day. Everyone just breathes. But if we look at even singers, for example, for them to be able to hold such high notes for such a long period of time, or such low notes for such a long period amount of time, their breathing technique is just different. And I've actually gone a little bit further into that, not just being an athlete and working on my breathing, um, but even the Wim Hof method. And do you know who Wim Hof is?
No.
So Wim Hof, and I might butcher this, so don't quote me on this, but
Okay.
Wim Hof lives out in the mountains, I believe somewhere in Europe. I might be incorrect on that one. But and he developed a breathing method that unlocks a potential in your brain. And for his case, it's more of extreme cold temperature. So he does
Is it the man that's called the Iceman?
the Iceman, absolutely.
Yes.
So
Yes, I
he's
do.
got this breathing technique that unlocks a percent of your brain and your body, and in his instance, it mainly is able to allow him to live in colder temperatures and experience the cold and the snow and cold water and everything without really having severe impacts from it, not getting frostbite, not, shivering his core and his body temperature to so low that he's no longer functional. So it's amazing when you mention breathing is definitely probably the start of where our body can actually function, and we've been almost doing it wrong for our entire lives. So
It's not necessarily doing it wrong. You have to really think that it's an innate power that we have. And I just want to make a little comment about the Iceman. When he selects the people that he's going to work with, he actually selects them and he watches them. He watches them breathe, and he will not accept some people in his group to attempt to do this work. And he's looking at nervous system. If your breath and you carry a lot of anxiety, doing that kind of work can actually be very, very dangerous for you. I remember when I was extremely tense, and with the deviation of the spine, that a lot of nervous system in the second brain that we call in the solar plexus was compromised for me. I had digestive issue, blood circulation issues as an effect of the compression. And every time I put my body into a cold temperature water, I felt like I would have a heart attack. Now, as the years progress and I opened up, I can now go in cold temperature because I can actually regulate my breathing. So he is very careful about who he picks. And, it's very interesting that he also, the addition to what you were saying, he can heal his body through the breath.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So enlighten me very quickly on the healing himself with breathing technique and what you have done, especially with the spinal fusion surgery that you were offered as well. How does that all kind of correlate into almost preventing these surgeries being done, or preventing, any sort of injury to the body through these techniques?
Well, I think for me, the breathing technique, some of them were offered to me, but they didn't really work at the beginning. And I think everybody needs to find if it was very simple, there was one method, some people be very rich right now, but we're so unique. All of us, we have a different system in the body, and we all utilizing those systems differently. And the way we combine and we interact those systems is also very different and unique to each one of us. So I would say for me, there was more than just the breath. The breath was an indication of how stressed I was. But why was I stressed? So there were environmental stresses, but there was also stresses that had been carried from traumatic experiences. And that's when the work with the nervous system and nervous system regulation tools, somatic experience tools, that really, for me, changed my breath, but also changed the way my body was willing to heal. It didn't have anything, it had more tools available to make it happen. So the nervous system is a huge part of your healing process. So if you're in constant, which is in the nervous system world, we call it, it used to be called that. I don't know if the wording is changing because things evolved all the time. So I would say they call it a window of tolerance. We built this window where stress is a healthy thing to learn to become more adaptable. You need stress to grow and learn. And then if you're too much above the window of tolerance and you always high and stress, you're going to have health issues in that end. And they're going to be a bit different than if you eventually, some people are there for a while and they collapse and they go under the window of tolerance. And that collapse on the nervous system regulation technique or evaluation, I would say, is actually depression. It's become lethargy, procrastination, the inability to really be engaged in life. The social engagement system just shuts down.
That's where we always say it's a midlife crisis or it's a nervous breakdown or we end up getting burnt out.
Yes. And it's very easy in today's society to do that.
Absolutely. With all the stress levels that are around us, whether it's environmentally or socially or
even into yourself, your own mind, and the way you perceive yourself. So at the beginning, we talked,
absolutely.
you and I, you asked me how I was doing, and I said, I'm getting better, but somebody stole my phone on the weekend. Now, one of the things I didn't mention that I'd like to talk about to illustrate what I've just mentioned is my brain went into, how could you be so stupid? You've made a mistake and look what happened. Look at how much it's going to cost you. And it wouldn't stop to the point that I ended up putting a movie at night in the evening so I could fall asleep. I fell asleep because of the noise. And as soon as the movie was over, my brain woke up. And the first thing it would say was, how could you do this? You screwed up. And it really stopped me from sleeping. So then you fast forward the whole night like this. I barely had a few hours of sleep because my brain keeps doing this. And then the next day I wake up and I feel awful. My energy level is down. I look like I got the circle. I'm not doing well until I have a mindset training program. Like I became a mindset coach during COVID. And I thought, that's what you do all the time, and made me aware that I do this all the time. That's a really negative things to do to yourself, and many millions of us are doing it. We're so critical of ourselves. And I was able to turn it around, and eventually I used some of the techniques that I teach my clients, and I took that part of me and I hugged it internally and say, it's okay. Everybody makes mistakes. And I was able to turn it around, and my breath opened up. The weight on my chest released. When I do this to myself, I don't want to eat. I'm the opposite of most people. A lot of people will eat to soothe their stomach. That's emotional eating. I would do the opposite. I stopped eating. And then all of a sudden I became hungry. And then I became clear in my mind. Instead of continuously bashing myself on the head, I'm like, okay, it's your business, phone. You need to deal with this. Go now. Took the dog with me, went to the store, got a new phone, replaced everything, and moved on with my life. And I was so exhausted from the process when I got home. I fed my dog and then I passed out and slept 1 hour. So that's a healing process. And the stress was not external. It was in my head.
Yeah, and we could definitely have a much deeper conversation about mindset. And no matter how many years or how long you've trained yourself or have gone through that process, there's still times where, like you said, I mean, you've been doing this for 27 years. You know that we do see ourselves in a bad light and we shouldn't. And sometimes it still happens, but to have a system and have that place to kind of go back to where, hey, okay, maybe I've stressed about this too much. I'm not being able to sleep well. I'm not feeling great. I'm not hungry. My body is reacting not how it should. How can I fix this? What's the system to get back to this? And I think that's what we lack in today's society. The system to get back to being able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, I am valued. I am a person who is going to mess up. I am, and whatever it may be, And I think that's a big topic we could definitely talk about future sense wise. I want to bring it back a little bit into the Pilates side of things. I'm very curious on the preventative side of things. I've done Pilates as an athlete in the past. you now work with a couple of hockey players such as myself, but for a general aspect on the preventative side, what can Pilates do that you've seen in your 27 years of doing it, not just with yourself, but with your clients, that have made such a big impact into healing their bodies?
Well, the first thing about Pilates is it's low impact. You can work quite hard strengthening, and it works on flexibility, mobility, but it's very low impact on the joints. So that's quite amazing for many people. And if depending on how you apply the technique, because it really depends on your instructor or the approach they have, it can transform your entire way of movement and makes it more efficient. When you're more efficient and your systems are more working in harmony with each other, most likely you will respond quite well on incident or accident. I step off the sidewalk a little funny. Your body's got that mobility, that neurological conditioning to be pliable and respond well and not sprain your ankles. Now, accident happens. That will always be. But I give you the example. I work with a tennis player, and not just a weekender tennis player, and a lady, and I was teaching her an exercise that, if you've done Pilates, many people will recognize, rolling like a ball. And her spine was very inflexible. So I was teaching her for 1 year, roll like a ball, not like a box. And she was playing tennis at her club. I guess a ball had gone behind. She was backing out, about to do a shot, slipped on the ball, and her body automatically rounded. She did a backflip, ended up on her leg, and this lady was 47 years old. And the speed, the velocity of what happened, but her body automatically did that. And she got up on her 2 feet, and she said the entire club turned around and applauded her. And she didn't get injured.
That's awesome.
I think it's because of there's a lot of movement with spine. It really is, it reprograms the movement patterns that you have learned, and you're creating new one. Habits are hard to break. You have to kind of get at it for a little while. But with her, it was like for 1 year, every week, learning to roll like a ball. There was other things to it. So I think Pilates is extremely preventing for that, because it teaches people body to be more efficient. And there's a lot of biomechanic involved in it. I mean, in my world, there is. So I don't know if everybody is doing that, but the machine, the way they were designed, the programs, usually the way they design, they cover the body and up and down, and so it's a very interesting method.
Absolutely. And it's awesome to hear and kind of see that with your clients and working with them for a year and essentially preventing an injury. And I guess we never really know if we're going to prevent something until that something happens. But it's awesome to see that, and her rolling back and landing on her feet, not injured or anything. It's definitely a longevity play.
Yes.
The way that we've done Pilates in the past with my teams that I was part of, it's definitely a longevity play to be able to feel better in a long-term sense. And it's not where you're not going to look like a bodybuilder. You're not going to, essentially be the best athlete in the world by doing Pilates. It helps, but the idea behind it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're going to feel better every day. And like you said, restructure your body and the trauma that's within your body that we don't even realize is there into a way that I'm able to do more for a longer period amount of time. And we're not going to be walking around with canes in the future, or we're not going to have, wheelchairs, or because we've taken care of our bodies in a process that helps in the long term, not just in the short term.
Mm-hmm. For me, the way I teach Pilates, because again, it's very depending on what other modality you may have, but the way I teach Pilates, I always teach someone. Pilates for me, it's becoming a tool in my toolkit, and then that's just the only thing that I do. So as you mentioned in the introduction, I do other things, but I always tell someone at the beginning, I'm going to teach you how your body works. I'm like I'm the manual. I'm going to teach you I'm the manual. You come in the body, and often we don't understand how it works, and I'm going to empower you to understand what you're doing with all of this, and so that when you step out of here, the life becomes your studio, and you can actually really change and age gracefully, injury prevention, depending on how much you do it and what you do, and it has a lot of benefits.
Absolutely.
Compression is one of them. With age, you compress. Pilates really allows space between the joints. It's a decompressive techniques in some ways, and so it really helps not do this as we age.
Which is great. You know, if you want to keep your height, Pilates is definitely a good way to go. A question I always ask everyone that comes on the podcast: what's the first step that people can take into their journey of healing themselves internally, externally with Pilates?
With Pilates, I would say you need to research who you want to work with. Like I said earlier, not all instructors are equal. And I would say that applies to any kind of field, right? If you have special needs, you need to ask questions. Don't just assume everybody is doing the same thing. So if, let's say, I'm in my fees and I'm going through perimenopause and menopause and I'm having bone density issues, not quite sure working with a 21 years old that has a very flexible body, comes from a dance background, might understand your needs. Those are very different needs. You're a young girl that wants to have a certain form of shape and it's more physical, then it's okay to just go to any studios and just to enter. So I would say the first thing would be kind of research the approach and the instructors and to make sure that person can help you with your needs.
Awesome. Awesome. And going a little bit, just one question business wise, starting the Loft Pilates studio, what challenges did you go through starting your business and how are you able to overcome them?
Well, starting the business was easy. I mean, it was very easy. It was the growth for me. I started in my home because I wasn't sure. And I was working for other studios and I started the business in my home. But I became so busy that I had to take it out of my home and open up a physical space, like a space. And then I was working like a mad woman. Couldn't see in, like, there's more people coming and I was by myself and I had to hire instructors and it became a business and it grew and it grew and it grew. And for me personally, the challenge was to grow with it at that speed and that level. But the
And
starting point was easy for me. I don't know. It was just a natural progression. I just wanted to have my own clientele base and have my own business. I had a vision about how I wanted to do it. I didn't want it to be like a gym. So it's like opening it up was not a challenge at all.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Sometimes I hear the two biggest things that I always hear is starting it was one of the hardest things and getting it going. And the second thing is like you said, growth. So what advice can you give, a very short, quick advice to all of the Pilates studios that are starting or are in the struggle of growing? What can they do? What's a quick advice that you would give them?
My God, I think it might be different for everyone, but I would say for me, understand what helps you wake up in the morning and gets you excited. Is it running a business or is it being a teacher? Those are two different things. If you want a successful business, most likely at one point or another, you're going to need to drop the teaching and focus on the business because those are two very different part of your brain working and different energy, different efforts. So it depends on what your goal is. I was a teacher at heart. I'm still a teacher at heart. I love teaching. That's what makes me excited when I get up in the morning. I wanted my own business, but I had no idea. I had a bit of a business background. I was an executive assistant for large corporations, so I kind of knew how to run a business to a certain degree. But then at one point I was confronted with that situation because it will happen to everyone, and I chose the business and I got really depressed, and so I switched. I ended up shrinking the business and focusing more on the teaching, and so
I
it really depends on what you want.
I love that advice. It's definitely true. I always say, and I'm sure everyone hears it all the time, it's removing yourself from the business. So what is your purpose of starting this business? What do you want to do? Do you want to teach? Do you want to run the business? And whatever you may want to do, focus on it and hire out for the people or hire people who are going to do the job that you don't want to do. So if you're a teacher at heart, hire someone or work with someone that will take care of the business side of things so that the business can still grow. And then you can continue waking up every day and doing what you love, or vice versa. If you're a business person, want to take care of the business, hire the best person that can work with you on with your clients and doing Pilates with them and having the best instructor and for people to be able to understand your client's needs. So I love that advice. I always ask all of the people that hop on the podcast with me that question, just to kind of see everyone's story is always different. Obviously, we see a trend in a lot of it, but it was a pleasure speaking with you. The last thing before I'm going to let you go is, where can people find more information? Where are you located? What's your social media handles?
Oh, okay. So I'm located in Toronto. The name of my business is The Loft Pilates. And you can reach me at theloftpilates.com, or I think I have an Instagram account. I'm not a big social media girl. I'm the old school, but I do have the Loft Pilates, I believe, on Instagram and a Facebook page.
Awesome. Well, I'll have
Best way is the website, really.
Perfect. Perfect. I'll have all that information down below in the description. So if anyone's in the Toronto area, in Canada, reach out to Myriam, go on her website, go on her Instagram, find out, go in, talk with her a little bit, see how she can help you achieve whatever goal that you may have in mind with Pilates or on the mental side of things as well. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Myriam. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Thank you, Elliot. That was very pleasant. I quite enjoyed it.